So anyway, let's do the annual. So we have a bunch of quarters here. We don't have too much, but we'll kind of go a little bit quickly. We're going to do some forecasts. So how do we do forecasts? That's really hard, the hardest part about all of this, isn't it? You know, the past sales anybody could do. You guys saw me do it in, what, 10 minutes? That's pretty easy. And it maybe looked complicated or looked like I was doing it really fast, but at the end of the day, anybody can learn to do that. It's no different from playing a video game or riding a bicycle or whatever. The brain comes in now. Right now, we have to ask ourselves really hard questions. What the heck is going to happen to the future? The past we know. The past we can look at these and see. But what the heck is going to happen tomorrow? And so the company gives guidance, so that doesn't hurt. But the guidance is only for 1 year. So they kind of have a sense for what's going to happen. But even the company doesn't really know. Isn't that funny? The company is not always right about that. Well, let's look at this royalty line. It looks like this royalty line is the same every damn quarter, right? It averages about 15 quarter. So you know what? I'm going to forecast. I'm going to take the bold step of saying I think it's going to be 15 again. All right, so we got 15 down. We got still what? 7 more assets to go. So which other ones look like they're really stable? Well, let's look at Naglesheim. Naglesheim has been 103 on average for a while, and we can even do like a moving average of 4 quarters. Let's try that. So we're going to do moving average of 4 quarters, and we can see that that doesn't move very much. It stays on average around 100. So would it make sense for us to do 100? I don't see why not. Vimism is different. Vimism is kind of growing. So let's see what happens if we do the moving average there. Well, you can see it seems to be kind of growing. First it was 150, then it kind of moved up to 160. Maybe 165 is a healthy moving average for Vimism. We'll try that. Palinzik, well, this one looks like it's going up around 1 every quarter, so I'm just going to do that. And the quarterly forecasts are not nearly as important as the annual forecast. When we get to the annual forecast, that's going to be really big. Well, Kuvan went generic, so Kuvan looks like it's dropping 1 or 2 every quarter, maybe even as much as 3 a quarter, so let's drop it by 3. Brineura is a new drug, but kind of looks like it's topped out a bit. Maybe let's just add 1 per quarter. Now this is the wild card. Voxzogo, well, they're saying it's going to be 130 to 160. So let's see. If they do 40 and 60, that would be 150, which is right around what they're telling us it's going to be. Let's see how we did with Brineura. Brineura, they say 145 to 160. We got it right in the middle at 150. Okay, what else? For Kuvan, they're saying 210 to 235. Well, we got it at right in the middle. Okay. Palinzik, they're saying 250 to 275. Oh, we got Palinzik too low, according to them. So I guess Palinzik is they think it's gonna grow faster. And obviously they have more information than we do, but they did lower their guidance, if you noticed. They went from 280 to 310. And I said, you know, it's gonna be more like 250 to 275, which tells you something. So maybe the fact that we're below even that 250 number, maybe we're right. So I'm gonna leave it there. Screw it. All right, Naglesheim, they're saying 415 to 450. We're kind of at the upper end of that. And then finally, Vimism, 686. We're kind of right in the middle of what they're saying. So we're about right here. The total revenues we're saying will be 2.025 billion, which is a little shy than what they're saying. But I've yet to include Aldurazyme. So let me include Aldurazyme, and then I think we'll be in the right place. So Aldurazyme on average has been 28 a quarter. Aldurazyme, if you know the product, is a really old product. So I don't see any reason why we can't just take the average of the last 8 quarters or so and just do it there. So now total revenue is roughly 1 billion, which is almost exactly in the middle of what they've guided to. And I didn't look at the guidance before I forecasted that. Now I do have half the year already done, so it isn't too hard to forecast. Now I have to forecast margins. So margins have been around 77 for a while. I think their new product, Voxzogo, is pretty high margin, so I'm going to forecast maybe 78% margins. We'll see how that goes. The OPEX almost doesn't matter what we forecast because, again, this is not a rational spending company. They're just kind of spending to grow, and I'm not sure it makes a difference. Although I'd be kind of curious what the SG&A year over year is. So let's take a look at that. The R&D is kind of unpredictable. That's up to them how much they're investing. I don't even like to look at R&D as a cost, to be honest, for drug companies, because ultimately, if they play their cards right, I want them to spend money on R&D. So let me say it's not really a cost center if you ask me. So let's just say it's going to grow 5% year over year for SG&A. Oh, by the way, if you look at the revenue growth that we're forecasting, it's going to be pretty big. And I think that's partially because in Q3 they had some weird one-time low revenue in a couple of products. In the I remember when this quarter happened actually. There's a lot of controversy as to whether or not it was permanent or a one-time issue. So I'm just gonna do a little of this, a little of that, and again I put all these models on my GitHub. So if you go to github.com /Martin Shkreli, you can download all these, and I'll be uploading this one real shortly, so you'll be able to get it. If you haven't used GitHub, you probably have heard of it. It's for computer science people, programmers, but non-programmers can use it too. It's really good for versioning and file control and stuff like that. So if you haven't incorporated GitHub into your life, you might want to, you might not want to, but regardless, it's a pretty neat tool. So anyway, we're now starting to build the annual forecasts. This is the pivotal part because one quarter here or there, it doesn't matter that much, but the years matter a lot. And the years are sort of how we value the company, right? How many years of cash flow can we expect from each year is the basis for basically all finance. If you ever took a finance course or an investing course, that's sort of all you worry about is how do you discount cash flows for the whole year. So we only have 2 years to go on. We have 2021 and 2022. 2022 is a forecasted year, so it's not even a year that we have to go on in a sense, because some of it is just our forecast. And maybe if I had more time, I'd add 2020 and the other years. And maybe I will, we'll see. But for now, we've got 2021 and 2022. All right. So it looks like revenue grew for them modestly. Maybe that's 10%. What do you guys think? 12%, 13% for 2022. Now the question is, will it grow for 2023? And that's the hardest question. And you really got to think hard about that. Let's get the 2020 numbers just so we have some context. And that'll only take a second because we'll just hop down to, yeah, we'll hop down here. So for 2020, Vimizim did 544.4. Naglazyme actually went down for 2021 from 2020. Okay, Kuvan went down. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Kuvan went generic, so Kuvan kind of fell off a cliff. But Kuvan is the only pill or small molecule these guys were selling, so you're not going to see another fall off the cliff moment for BioMarin anytime soon. Bernura, and you can see they have like a handful of small products. Obviously, Vimizim is starting to get up there in terms of its size. But it's really just a bunch of small products, which is kind of a nice place to be from a generics perspective. You know, these drugs are too small to really attract a lot of competition, which is kind of like a nice strategic benefit of being in the business they're in. All right. So 1.8 billion in product sales. You can see if you think about like how has revenue grown over the years, it's been kind of tepid, right? If you look at even with them launching a few new products, it's kind of, the word sad comes to mind. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's a little disappointing maybe that, you know, they've launched a couple of really nice new products, and at the end of the day, you can see revenue growth really tepid. 1.86 to 1.85 to 2.1 billion, really kind of not that great of revenue growth. So pretty disappointing if you ask me. I'm sure the company has hoped for more, but the genericization of Kuvan probably didn't help them very much. So anyway, let's keep doing this, and we'll get to a fair value number fairly soon. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll give us a decent guess for what BioMarin is worth. And we'll do one more year just so we get the benefit of history a little bit of how these assets have been performing, which sometimes will tell you how the future is coming, and of course sometimes it won't. Oftentimes it won't, in fact. So let's see, 191, 678. All right, let's get one more year down. So we're going to go to their 2020 report. Should be here somewhere. Should be right here. Cool. All right, so this is Vimizim in 2019. Interestingly, was basically flat, right, with 2020. And then it started picking up again in 2021, and picking up again in 2022. And sometimes those are price increases, so we actually have to see if there's any new volume for Vimizim, or if they're just raising the price of Vimizim every year, which, as you know, I don't think is such a bad idea. But that's just me. So yeah, I mean, this is really hard to tell. Like, what will the future of Vimizim look like? Because they were flat in 2020, but then they started growing again, which is a little weird, right? So I don't know. All right, 374.3. So Naglazyme has kind of still been growing if you think about it. I mean, this isn't great growth, but it's a slow grower. And again, that's really important for us when we have to think about, well, what's this asset going to do in the long run? That's still really important. So Kuvan, I think, is going to be the easiest to forecast. It's just going to sort of fade into nothingness. That's typically what happens with these kinds of products. And now you can see a little bit healthier growth, right? 1.6, 1.8, sort of over 2 years, and then 2 billion. So a little bit healthier as we zoom back. Kind of very steady growth. And I've always liked BioMarin as a company, as an investment. Again, I think the progress has been a little slower than maybe they would have liked and most shareholders would have liked, but it's a really solid company. Sometimes people would ask me, like, what company would I buy and put away for a really long time, and I often would say BioMarin because it's just a really well-run company that makes great products and is one of the few rare disease kind of leaders. Again, they haven't been like a tremendous stock or anything, but in the long run, it's really safe. That's the one thing I like about BioMarin. It's so safe. Like, these drugs are not going anywhere anytime soon. They're like really critical medicines for people, really important, and they obviously are going to come out with more of them over time. So anyway, what do we do from here? Well, let's do the same thing we did with the quarters. We see royalties are sort of probably going to, they're growing a little bit, I guess, but I'm going to say just conservatively that they stay at the 2022 level forever. Kuvan's going to be easy to forecast, and again, with this kind of forecast, our precision doesn't matter that much. It's the growers that matter a little bit more, so we're just going to forecast it going down 90 by 10%, so 90% of last year, every year from here on out, which, is probably not going to be a perfect forecast, but it doesn't matter that much how far we're off, because it's not going to make much of a difference. So now it's a lot harder. We're going to have to think about maybe these mature products first. So if we look at Aldurazyme, you can see it's sort of been flattish, maybe 5% growth. So I'm just going to put it at 3% growth just to be conservative. And then for Naglazyme, which is their second most mature product, it looks like that's probably a similar, maybe 4% is sort of similar. All right, so now we're going to get into much more challenging issues here, because we have to think about, well, what does Vimizim look like, and what does Palynziq look like? So for Vimizim, it looks like it's still growing a little bit. I think it might top out around 800, but I'm not sure. So, this forecast is a little bit of like a high single digits going down to a low single digits or mid single digits. So kind of just my experience in pharma tells me that it could grow faster than that. It's definitely not going to shrink. So we'll try for Palynziq now. So this is really tricky. This could become a $400 or $500 million product. It's still fairly brand new. I mean, it's only 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old. So it's really hard to tell what Palynziq's going to do. Palynziq is a drug you take, I think, on top of Kuvan, or maybe if you can't take Kuvan. So it's for the same disease, PKU, phenylketonuria, or however you pronounce it. I don't know. That's a really tricky one. So we're going to put a placeholder number in there just to sort of see. All right, Bernura seems like it's slowing, and I think there's going to be competition for Bernura at some point. So it's probably not done growing since it's a fairly new product, but I'm just going to sort of shave off it being too much of a grower. All right, Voxzogo is the real tricky one. That one's going to be probably a really big grower. So my guess is, let's see, I'm going to hand code some of these numbers. This could be one of Biomarin's biggest products by far. But I'm still going to be a little bit conservative. Try it like that. All right, so you can see just with the product portfolio, we have them going to $3 billion in revenue, just with the existing products. We're not even including any pipeline products yet. So what's the revenue growth for that look like? Sort of like teens for another year, and then high single, mid-single digits for the rest of forever, which sounds right, about right. And that's without any new products. That's going to be the hard part. What are the new products, and what are they going to sell? And that's the big controversy for Biomarin, and we're going to go into that in 1 second. We're doing a real fast, quick, and dirty model here. Let's see. Taxes. I'm going to start having them pay taxes. Pay 20% tax rate over time. All right, so R&D, I'm going to have them grow. I'm not going to exclude R&D. I'm going to have SG&A grow by around 4%. All right, so you can see that they've become profitable under my model, and they'll start making around $1 billion a year, which is a lot. And let's look at the discount rate, because they don't make any money right now. So let's put an 8% discount rate, and I'll talk to you about why we're doing that in a second. At maturity, let's say the cash flows fall 1% a year. So they're 99% of the last year. We'll put that out going into infinity. After a while, it doesn't matter anymore. So now we'll do a net present value. All right, and we're just going to take all of 2023, and we get $13 billion. Well, that's not good news if you're a Biomarin shareholder, right? Because the stock is trading for, as we talked about earlier, around $17 billion. So what does that mean? The stock is at 90, and maybe it should be at 70 according to our math, right? So we would pass on this one possibly, but we don't know what Valrox is worth, right? If Valrox, which we talked about earlier, if that's going to be a huge medicine, then everything changes. If Valrox is not going to be a medicine at all, well, these aren't worth very much because they're very early in the development pipeline. So there's sort of 3 key questions, right? First, how big can Voxzogo get? 400 million? 600 million? 800 million? 2. What will Valrox do? 0? 500 million? 1 billion? What, and third is, what is the base business growth, if any? And this is probably less important question, and maybe a sub-question is the rest of the pipeline worth anything? Now what's interesting is you're going to have a lot of permutations of these 4 things, right? So if you have 4 things, and the first one has 3 options, the next one has sort of 3 options, the second one maybe has 2 options, the second one has maybe 2 options, you have 36 combinations of possibilities, right? So we put net cash in there. So we also, did not, well, let's try this. I made one little omission, so let's add that omission, since we can put in sort of interest growth from existing cash. So that's sort of the management question. Can management do anything with this cash? Hey, let's assume they earn 1% on their cash, which isn't very much. Especially in this interest rate environment, maybe we should assume something better than that. Call it 2%. All right, so the shares are still close to fairly valued. So 77 instead of 90. So it's a little bit off. We could even calculate how far off that is. it's 14% off. So pretty much within an error margin, I would say Biomarin is fairly valued.